The race to make finals in 2025 is heating up. This is the ladder as we are heading into round 23. The Crows are on top with 16 wins and they are a game ahead of 3 teams on 15 wins, Geelong, Collingwood and Fremantle. And then behind them, half a game behind, is the Brisbane Lions as they have the draw. And then 3 teams on 14 wins make up the 8, Gold Coast, Hawthorn and the Giants. But remember that Gold Coast do have that game in hand, and a game behind just outside the 8 is the Western Bulldogs. So what I'm going to do now is going to do my ladder predictor once again. If you watched my video a couple of weeks ago, I did do a ladder predictor, but I did not get some of the tips right. So I thought let's do another one and see what happens. So we'll start with Friday night game. So I've got St Kilda beating Essendon. I feel like there's going to be an upset in this round. I think it's going to come tonight. I think it's going to be Brisbane are going to beat Freo in Perth. They don't normally have the best record, but I've just got that feeling they'll beat them in a close one. And then I've got on the Saturday games, I think Gold Coast Giants. That's going to be a good game of footy. I think Gold Coast at home will win that, so I've gone for that. Carlton will beat Port. Hawthorn will beat Melbourne, I think by about 30 odd points. And Saturday night's game is going to be a classic, I reckon. The Crows Collingwood. I've got the Crows winning. And then on Sunday, North Melbourne, I think, will beat Richmond. Geelong will beat Sydney. And the Bulldogs will smash West Coast by about 70 odd points. And then we go to the last round. So we start with the Thursday night game. We care too much about that, but we'll put it anyway. Carlton will beat Essendon. And then Friday night, we've got Collingwood beating Melbourne. I think Gold Coast will beat Port Adelaide at Adelaide Oval. And then the Saturday games, we start with North Melbourne, the Crows. I think the Crows will win that easily. And then we've got Geelong, I think will smash Richmond. And then we've got Sydney beating West Coast that night. And then the Sunday games where it gets interesting. Giants, I think, will beat the Saints. And I reckon the Bulldogs, Dockers, that's a good game of footy. I think they'll just beat them. Brisbane will beat Hawthorn at the Gabba. And then the last game is the make-up game with Gold Coast will beat Essendon. So without further ado, let's have a look at the final ladder that I've got. So we've got the Crows on top with 18 wins, a game clear of second and third, which are Geelong and Gold Coast with 17 wins, Geelong with a better percentage. Brisbane finishing in the top 4 because I've got them beating Freo and Hawthorn. I think they'll get their confidence back and win those last 2 games. And they've got the draw ahead of Collingwood, who will just miss out because I think they'll lose to the Crows. So I think that will be their downfall to miss the top 4, which is crazy given midway through the year they were cruising. And then 4 teams on 15 wins. The Bulldogs, Hawthorn, Giants and Freo. Now I've got Freo just missing on percentage because I think they'll lose tonight's game against Brisbane and then next week against the Bulldogs. But hey, I'll probably be proven wrong. So Dockers fans, don't really look into this too much. I feel like it's probably not going to be correct. They might get a win and they'll be alright. But who knows what might happen with this ladder. If you have a look, you notice that 15 wins doesn't necessarily mean you're going to make finals. How does this compare to any other AFL season we've had since 1990. I'm going to go look through a couple of teams that have got the best win-loss ratio in the last 35 years and see how this compares to this season, because this is a crazy season that 15 wins may not even get you in finals. So there have been a lot of teams that have finished with 12 wins and still could make finals. 1998 is where we start. Richmond then, they didn't make it. You had Hawthorn in 2003, St Kilda in 2012 and 2016, Port Adelaide in 2015, and then Melbourne in 2017. Now I remember this year because I think West Coast had to win by a particular amount against the Crows in Perth in the last round, and I reckon they only did it by a goal. So Melbourne were very unlucky not to make finals in 2017. Then you go 2018, 4 teams had 12 wins and didn't make it. North Melbourne, Port Adelaide, Adelaide Crows and Essendon. In 2022, Carlton had 12 wins as well. And then just in 2024, Collingwood had 12 wins and 2 draws. So I guess that kind of counts as like 13 wins because the draw counts as half. They really had 13 wins and they still couldn't make it. But there is one more team in 35 years of AFL history that have actually had more wins than all these clubs, but still couldn't make finals. We have to go back to 1992, where Carlton had 14 wins and 8 losses, and they still couldn't make finals. Back then, it was only a top 5 that made it through. So the final system was a little bit different. So it was actually a bit harder to get in. But Carlton pretty much in that top 5. And then they lost their last 2 games of the season. They lost to Collingwood and then lost to West Coast, who were the eventual premiers that year. They had to go to Perth to play them. It was a bit of a hard ask. But I think it's the game against Collingwood the week before where they let themselves down, where they were leading at 3/4 time, ended up losing that game, and then losing to West Coast, and they had to rely on St Kilda losing to Melbourne in the last round, which couldn't happen. So they actually only lost out of percentage. I think there was only 2 teams that just made it ahead of them. Same amount of points, which I believe was St Kilda and Hawthorn, drawn, but they just made it on percentage. Carlton can consider themselves unlucky. They had a very good side. They had the fullback of the century in Steve Silvani, a great forward in Stephen Kernahan, and I think they just recruited Greg Williams from Sydney Swans, and he became a Brownlow medalist in a couple of years later, and he was a Brownlow medalist back in the 80s, and then obviously Craig Bradley on the wing too. So they actually had a very good side, Carlton. They were very unlucky not to make it, but it didn't matter too much. They did play better in 1993 and made the grand final, ended up losing to Essendon. So even though there was 14 wins as the highest, judging from my predictor, it's going to get beaten. It's going to be a team that's going to have 15 wins and is not going to make finals. That's going to be the first time ever that's ever going to happen. 15 wins. We all probably assumed that 13 wins would get you in, but nowadays you need more than that. It's been so one-sided in terms of the top 9 just dominating compared to the bottom 9 who haven't been so good. But just wait for these last 2 rounds. It's going to be so exciting. It's going to be great to watch. And all these predictions that I've made, I feel like it's just not going to happen. I feel like there's just going to be so many things that are going to happen that was not predicted. It's just going to be so exciting. 9 teams can make it into the top 8, and any of the 6 teams that are in the top 8 can actually miss. It's unbelievable this season. So can't wait for these last 2 rounds, and the final series is going to be amazing as well. So if you enjoyed this video, give it a like and subscribe if you are new here. Comment what you think of this ladder. Do you think this is actually going to happen, or do you disagree? Let me know in the comments. I love reading your comments. It's just great to have that support, so I really do appreciate it. And if you want to watch any more of my content, have a look at this video here. I think you'll enjoy this one.